Right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my principal's pitch. It's Friday. We've got 2.5 weeks to go to the end of term, and summer holidays are fast approaching. This will actually be my last filmed principal's pitch. Next week, I'll be writing to you, in particular, saying some farewells to staff. And then the following week, it will be information about the end of term and the start of next year. This past week, we enjoyed the Year 13 prom, and it took place at Coral Beach. And for your information, it was entirely organised by our Year 13s. They form a prom committee in Year 12. They fundraise, organise all the logistics, the menu, food, items for the evening, order in decorations and a DJ, etc. And all on their own. We do have some parent chaperones who support on the night. So well done to them, and thank you to those parent chaperones for their involvement. I know it was a wonderful evening. Tomorrow we have World Ocean Day. As a school that's heavily invested in marine science, we've got our marine science facility and a science faculty that do a lot on environmental sustainability and in particular the ocean. We do recognise that tomorrow. I'd ask you just to give some consideration to the meaning around World Ocean Day tomorrow. You'll also note that just below the Principal's Pitch video link, just below that in my message, I have some information to you about child safeguarding at Warwick Academy. Over the last few months, we've been looking at tweaking and improving some of our provision, and there's a number of information links there that will take you to everything from a general document explaining safeguarding at the school and our philosophy, our child protection policy, our safeguarding team, and various other things that I would encourage you to please take a look at. Right, so that was the end of my kind of notices of the week, and now to turn to our last opportunity to muse, Mr. Thorpe. Good to have you back in the office. And
Good to be here again.
I asked parents last week to share some questions, and I picked one question out that I think we could both ask each other. And interesting question, and thank you to the parents who sent it in. And it was, what two things do you find most difficult in your job? And I think we're focusing now on your head of secondary job.
Yeah. Only two?
Well, I think they were kind to say focus on two. Time. It must be about time, right?
Yeah, time. No, I think the first one is for me. It's dealing with parent expectations, both on an academic and a pastoral level. From academic level, we've got parents who put a lot of stress on their son and daughters and expect them to achieve, top grades all the time, and that's just not really possible, and it puts a lot of stress on the student. And we've been talking a lot about mental well-being and about how important that is, and we've got to do our bit at home and at school to kind of reduce that kind of student stress. But for me, I think somebody said it to me when I was talking to one parent. I said, if you think about a year group, and they were quite focusing on where's my kid in the year group? Are they average? Are they above average? And I said, well, if we think of a year group at Warwick Academy, by definition, half of the class are going to be below average. So we've got to be very careful with some of the labels that we kind of use, and we've got to be kind of understanding that there's the right tertiary education for every student at Warwick Academy, and it's working out what's going to be the best thing for them. And then from a pastoral perspective, just that expectation of more dealing with, when something happens and the parent who, well, not my child doesn't do that. My child would never do anything like that at home. And even when you've got, lots of evidence that this has happened and there's no kind of real clear rationale for what's happened, sometimes we just need to be a little bit more accepting that, our children do things wrong from time to time, and that's part of life. We make mistakes, but it's how we learn from the mistakes and how we grow from them that's going to be really important. I mean, if I think about my two boys that came here, a couple of them had a couple of incidents that, I wasn't very particularly happy with. And I really had to kind of think and say, they've made a bit of a mistake. And, yes, that was them. But that's not going to define them forever, and they're going to move on from it.
No, I can relate to that.
Yeah, so I think that, for me, that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is just when people react to things too quickly, and from a staff perspective, an incident happens and they don't take the time to really think about, what was the story before that kind of incident, and what kind of the factors
it's so important,
in there,
isn't it? Like the lead up and the information.
Yeah, and sometimes in this world where everything's immediate, everybody wants to see an immediate consequence, and we want to put demerits in straight away. And sometimes I think we need to just kind of step back and think, actually, was that true? And in the past, we have changed demerits afterwards, after we've gone back and kind of thought about that situation. And then from a parent perspective as well, when something happens, like they get one bad grade on a test and the email goes in, or they get a demerit for something, the email comes in, and it's like, well, take a minute just to talk to your son and daughter about what's going to happen, and think about that, and talk to them a little bit about that, and instead of firing off that response of which can be very emotional as well. It's trying to be as rational as possible.
Really sort of that word communication and as you say, take a pause, breathe, have a look, consider, look at the information provided, and then look at the best response out of that. And as you mentioned, we your experiences are both in sort of with staff as well as with parents.
So what about you? What's the two, as a principal, what's the two most difficult things you have to deal with? Apart from your head of secondary.
Apart from well, he's going now, right? I think it's similar to your points about the communication. So I have occasionally to deal with kind of what I'd call the sort of broken telephone, gossipy, false perception type, situations where information is moved in whatever direction, whether it's through sort of verbal communication, something on a WhatsApp chat, echo chamber, or elsewhere, and it kind of evolves into something which is huge, and often it's I find it incorrect when you actually look at the facts and you unpack the layers involved. It isn't what it seemed to be, and I guess it's that sort of idea of, well, the difficulty for me is having to deal with it and try and navigate it and find out what's happened and when and where and who said what, etc., and try and sort of pull it back to a point where you can positively move it forward. But I think it's that idea of, if people, and we're talking about staff, parents and students in this, if they're unsure about something, if they've heard something, if they want clarity, come and speak to the main people, come and speak to the key people, get the right information, the right facts up front, and then unpack it from there. It's that idea of just trying to sort of, not have that broken telephone scenario play itself out for a long time before you're able to layer it back. So keep the door open. Our doors are open for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, fake news is everywhere at the moment, isn't it? We hear about this all the time, and we do quite a lot with our students about, how do we spot fake news in the media and news and things like that. Maybe we need to do some fake news education with our parents
and staff, and the idea of triangulation of information, and we want to be able to be as clear as we can. We want to be able to be very factual about information we share, and understand how that can shift and change. But that is definitely a challenge in my position. And I'd say the other one, and this is, I guess, that the fact that we're a private or independent institution, we have to collect money to make our school run. It's unfortunately the chasing down of school accounts that are overdue. I don't enjoy that part of the job. There's so many parts of the job I love and enjoy, but that is not a part I enjoy. It's a difficult job. I take my hat off to our finance department that have to keep the show on the road through the year, and we obviously hugely value payments on time. If I can get that out there, but I guess it's that chase and that job where I have to step in to ask the question about overdue
I think
accounts.
Particularly because we try to keep our fees as low as possible. I mean, if we look at the fees increases across us compared to the other private schools, our fees are significantly less than, for example, BHS, Summersfield, Saltus, and there's there's very little fat in what we do. So that's why it's so important that the accounts we do have are collected.
It is,
because we don't have a slush fund of money that can account for people who don't pay the bills.
No, that is it, and I think that's a part of the job I find difficult and I don't enjoy.
Yeah.
But again, then that's part of the job. There's some wonderful parts of it. Most of them are wonderful, and I mean, that one of the reasons I keep teaching is because actually, the best part of the job is in the classroom.
Yeah.
So, and I know you teach, and we've got a philosophy at Warwick Academy where everyone teaches. It doesn't matter what level of leadership you're in, but I'd say those are the two. Mark,
Okay.
well, thanks. Listen, this has been great. Appreciate everything. I know we've got a few weeks to go and some farewells to make, but your efforts at Warwick have been significant over the last number of years, and I hugely appreciate what you've done and the things we've been able to get right here. And I'm confident we're going to keep doing that, and I look forward to a little
travel updates,
little travel update, and a tap on the shoulder when you're ready to come and offer something back at Warwick Academy.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Cheers, Mark. Thanks.